Hello, I'm Emmy Stuebing, the CEO here at the Zebra Child Protection Center, and I'm joined today by Sergeant Kerry Shima from the Alert Internet Child Exploitation Unit, as well as Sergeant Manuel Illner from the Edmonton Police Service Child Protection Unit section, which is based out of the Zebra Center. Throughout February, we have been talking all about internet safety, online dangers, and safer internet practices to increase education and awareness for caregivers and as well as children and youth. Last week, we asked our Instagram followers to submit questions for us to discuss with our experts here today. And so let's just jump right in and get going with our conversation. Can you please tell us about the risks children and youth can face online?
Thanks, Emmy. The internet's a big place right now, and it's accessible to everybody. So good people, loving people, bad people, and even criminals. So some of the risks that really stand out for investigators in our unit, especially for kids and teens, are people who they interact with that pretend to be someone who they aren't. So people will often portray themselves to be someone that the kids might have something in common with, would share interests with, or things like that. And in some of these cases, those people aren't actually intending to be their friends. They're looking to get something out of our kids and our teens.
Would you say there's more risk? Are risks more frequent with teens? And if so, why? And what might they be?
I don't know if the risks are necessarily more frequent with teens. There's different risks associated with some of our younger victims, as well as the teens being a little more prone to using technology. They're going to have naturally more risk online. A lot of the risk that we're seeing teens becoming involved in or being exposed to are when predators, again, portray themselves to be someone they aren't, and ultimately gaining the trust of those teenagers, and the teenagers being tricked into sending sexualized pictures or nudes, as it were, and being extorted for sometimes money, gift cards, more pictures and videos. In this world, we call that capping. So it's something that we're seeing a lot of. It's child luring as well as extortion.
Manuel, can you tell me a bit about online gaming? We know that it's become increasingly popular. What are some of the risks that we're seeing with online gaming?
Yeah, thanks, Emmy. Obviously, with technology getting better and better every year, more gaming starting to go online, and a lot of the kids are playing these online games daily now. So some of the risks, one of the biggest risks, is that a lot of these online gaming platforms have a chat component to them. So that's where we start having predators start luring for kids and finding kids on these chat platforms, because they would have access to those chats, and they can easily expose them to inappropriate conversations or redirect them to inappropriate content on other sites. And in most cases, records of these chats is not saved. So that way they get to communicate, and then when the game's over, the chat is gone, right? So the other things is that some of these devices actually have GPS during gameplay as well, so allowing the location of the user to be seen by other users as well.
What research should caregivers do before giving their children access to the internet?
Oh, there's definitely a lot of things that can be done. So before you're giving these kids access to some of these games, is you can look into if the game is moderated. So is it monitored by the company or the owner of the platform? Does it contain sexually explicit or violent material? Is it age appropriate? And then the chat option that we just mentioned earlier, is there an option that can be turned off? There's other optional features that can be turned off as well for safety. So the advertisements in the game, can they redirect kids to other sites? Lots of review of the gaming guidelines. Can you report that inappropriate activity to anybody? And then I think just when you're actually getting ready to allow the kid to play, set up the login information and the password with your kid, so that you know what it is, so you can access that as well. and just so there's other things. But I also I'll learn about the game and how the game works, and actually play along with your child, so that you understand what the game's about and what they can and can't access there.
And would a lot of those same rules go with social media as well, like things like log in together, those kinds of things?
Yeah, 100%. Again, having access to your login, the kids' login information is great. That way you can access it. It's not so much spying on them as it is to keeping them safe, right? So you can access some of the chats that they're involved in, some of the pages they're following and accessing. So again, it's all for the safety, right? So.
I heard that in February of last year, CyberTip stated that there'd been an 88% increase in reports of online exploitation. Has this trend continued over this past year as well, or how are things going with that?
I mean, things are definitely trending up again. The expectation isn't that we're going to see a downward trend in exploitation on the internet. I mean, number one, because the internet is only getting bigger, technology is only getting better, and the world's population is 8 billion and counting. So more users, better technology, more accessibility, things like that. Since 2017, our office has seen 122% increase in reporting. And this year we're on pace for 55% more intake than last year. So yeah, we're seeing some considerable reporting this year. We've had a few new platforms begin reporting consistently, such as TikTok, which is starting to report quite a bit. But yeah, we're seeing a heavy increase, big workload, and I don't know that that's ever going to go down. It's just going to get busier and busier.
Now, Kerry, would you say, are there any signs or things that parents should maybe be looking for if they're worried that their child or youth is having a negative experience online?
Sure, that's an excellent question. A lot of the cases that we're seeing, and we don't even need to be part of the investigation further than the report itself, we're seeing the images, is that children and teens are using devices in private areas of residences, typically. So bathrooms, bedrooms, closets, things like that, basements, where they're not going to, where they don't expect to be caught or to be found engaging in this type of activity. And sometimes it might even be the offender on the other end telling them what to do if they find themselves in a situation with someone like that. So parents should be looking to see where their children are using their devices, when they're using their devices. And we could get into a discussion about boundaries as well. Manny talked a little bit about that, but knowing when, where, why your kids are using devices are big things. And if you have those boundaries set, something that's going to be out of the norm is going to be very apparent to our guardians and our parents. Behavior such as dressing differently. We're talking about what we're looking for, right? So dressing differently, maybe separating themselves from a typical friend group or usual friend group. And parents know their kids the best and would recognize certain behavior changes. I mean, if we're talking about teenagers, I mean, that could be day to day, but we're talking about macro changes, things that are going to be very apparent if you're really paying attention. So yeah, that's those are a few things that we could be looking for.
And so just wondering then, like, if a parent does see some of these changes or a caregiver sees them, like, what should they do then in that moment? Like, should they talk to the child? Should they just report something right off the bat? Like, how do you sort of recommend next steps, I guess, Kerry?
And that's a good question and a tricky question, because it really depends on what kind of relationship the guardian or the parent or maybe a teacher or a daycare worker or somebody has with the kids. If it's not the parent or the guardian yet, it should be reported to the parent that the behavior is a little bit different. Now, if it's a parent, it all starts with the trust you have with your child and in determining what they're going to tell you or what they're going to share with you. And of course, in all of these cases, the kids are not the ones who are the offenders or who have done anything wrong. Yeah. And I think that sometimes get lost, especially with us Gen Xers who didn't grow up with this type of technology. It's, you're punished for doing something bad, or we were told stranger danger, like don't talk to strangers. The world's a different place, and we can't be living by those guidelines anymore. And it's about building trust. And like Manny said, spend some time with your kids, build that trust with devices, with apps, with social media, and give them an understanding that if something goes wrong, this is a safe place, because we don't want them to get scared, and we don't want them to think that they've done something wrong, rather that someone else has done something wrong and I'm going to tell my parent about that.
How should parents or caregivers talk to their children or youth just about this in general? Do you have any tips for conversation starters or questions that can maintain trust?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to vary obviously from age to age, but I mean, kids are using online platforms as early as they basically can walk, right? So it's just letting them know that there is risks out there, letting them know what the risks are, and then just telling them, look, if something like this happens, you need to come talk to me about it. And again, reiterate that thing like Kerry said, that you're not in trouble. It's someone else is doing something wrong, and they need to be dealt with. So that it just opens up the lines of communication with your kiddos, right? So, but again, like this, it ranges all the way up to older teenagers, where they're going to be using that stuff daily and many hours a day. But again, so they're aware of what's happening there and what could potentially happen to them. And another good thing is that knowing the age of consent as well, right? Like a lot of these predators are portraying themselves as the same age as these teenagers. But again, how do you know that online? So it's again, if someone's reaching out to your child, that your child has the confidence and feels safe to come and talk to you about it. And those are all just guidelines that should be set out well before these online accesses happen. So
what should a caregiver do if you really believe something bad has happened?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're coming across conversations, chats, or anything that may be saved, or that, especially social media, where a lot of them are saved, if you come across conversations like that are sexual in nature, or they're luring, or they're trying to get information, or pictures, anything like that, you would definitely seize that phone. That's something that the police is going to want to download as evidence, right? So seizing that phone is step number one, and then contacting the Edmonton Police Service non-complaint line, or if you're in a rural area, your local RCMP detachment, to start an investigation, and then it'll be investigated at the front end, and then eventually could potentially end up with our ICE unit that carries that, or with child protection if there's some contact offenses that come into play as well.
Great. Did you have anything to add to that? Any for best practices, best approaches, Kerry, or is that pretty much summarize the best way to manage a situation like this?
Yeah, Manny's bang on. I think the sooner the police are involved and we can get things started, the better. Between the police agency of jurisdiction and the child advocacy center, I think that, the proper resources and supports could also be instilled in a timely fashion. So otherwise, I think what Manny said is just right.
My understanding is that there's no harm in reporting. If you suspect something, report it. Would you agree with that? Is that true?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, worst case scenario or best case scenario, you're wrong, right? So if you're wrong, then that's it, right? But if you are right, then at least that information is there, and the police can work with it.
Well, I sure appreciate the time that both of you have shared today, that your time and your expertise with us to help educate myself as well as all of our followers about the best practices for safety, how to stay safe, how to look after our kids when they're using the internet. And here's hoping that we can all hope to have more open conversations with the young people in our lives about how they can stay safe and be diligent online. So thank you again for your time and your sharing your expertise today. And for all of everyone watching this, please keep up with the Zebra Center to learn more about how you can recognize, report, and help keep children and youth who have experienced abuse safe. So thank you very much.